It started with a fire alarm that wasn't a fire. Midnight. Shrill blaring. Everyone stumbled out of Emery's glass-paneled townhouse with half-drunk cocktails still in hand. I remember standing on the lawn, barefoot, watching Theo zip up his jacket. The same Theo who'd been dared to take a shot off my wife's collarbone 20 minutes earlier while I pretended not to care. I still don't know who pulled the alarm. Probably the universe. Or someone who thought it'd be hilarious. But there we were. 30 adults dressed like teenagers, shivering on the lawn like it was homeroom evacuation in 2006. She was laughing. Marla. Laughing like someone who hadn't just crossed a line so thin it should have cut her. She was clutching Theo's arm, not mine, as they giggled about how wild the night had become. And I was standing 5 feet away holding her purse, like a valet with a broken heart. No one noticed. That was the most honest part. Earlier that night, someone had introduced the deck, high-stakes dares, not your average party game. These were handwritten cards with rules like, if you draw a red card, it must be witnessed. If you refuse, you're out. No exceptions. Spouses and exes are not exempt. If your dare exposes someone else, too bad. It was stupid, juvenile, dangerous, and everyone loved it. Card after card, kiss her, slap him, swap shirts, confess a secret, tell the truth or do something worse. Then came her card. Touch someone who used to make you nervous, and don't use your hands. The room erupted. Marla bit her lip, looked around, and locked eyes with Theo. I knew that look. It was the same look she gave me in 2014 in a grocery store parking lot. Just before we kissed in the rain, like people do in movies they later regret watching. Now it was his turn. And this time she didn't just give the look. She acted on it, leaning forward, whispering something, biting his shoulder playfully. Everyone screamed, laughed, filmed. I watched, still, a statue made of memory and shame. Later, after the fake fire alarm, after people joked about how this party's going to be talked about forever, after the sirens had stopped and the firemen had left and everyone shuffled back in, I stayed behind. Not out of pride, out of collapse. She came back out 5 minutes later, alone, said, "You're being weird." I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just said, "When the game ends, come find me, if I'm still findable." She blinked. "Curtis, it's a dare. It's not that deep." But it was. It had roots. It had rot. I walked home barefoot that night, 3 miles, pockets empty, mind buzzing. She texted once, "Where'd you go?" I didn't answer, because from that moment on, she was going to have to play her own game, the one where I no longer volunteered to be a pawn, and she had no clue how long or how twisted that game was going to get. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken. That would have been easier. I didn't sleep because I couldn't stop hearing it. The laughter. Not just hers, but theirs. The laughter that echoed through the party when she leaned into Theo, like I was a cardboard cutout in the background of my own life. It was the sound of permission. Permission to humiliate me while everyone else smiled like it was good TV. Around 4 a.m., I packed a small bag. No drama, no theatrics, just basics. Toothbrush, charger, a hoodie. The pair of shoes she always said made me look like someone who doesn't care anymore. Fitting. I didn't leave a note. I left the apartment key on the nightstand and closed the door as quietly as I could, even though a small, bitter part of me wanted her to wake up and see me go. But she didn't. The hallway was dead silent. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't explode. It slips. Quiet. Cold. Like a noise in the hallway that isn't her. I stayed with a friend for a few days, Nate, who works nights and doesn't ask questions. I told him I needed space. He shrugged, handed me a spare key and said, "Bathroom light flickers sometimes. Don't take it personally." On the 3rd night, she finally called. I didn't answer. She texted, "Can we talk?" Then again. "I'm worried." Then a 3rd time, an hour later. "Seriously, where are you? This is messed up." I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. Not once did she say sorry. Not once did she mention Theo. It was like I'd left over a parking ticket. That's when I decided, if she wanted to fix this, she'd have to admit the game wasn't fun anymore. She'd have to call off the performance and step into the silence she created. But silence is brutal, and people like Marla, they never survive long without an audience. On day 5, she posted a photo. Her and Theo, smiling. Caption, "It's not that deep." And just like that, I knew. She thought I was bluffing. She thought I'd come crawling back like I always had. After every argument, every cold shoulder, every emotional bait and switch she pulled when I said something that made her feel too seen. But not this time. This time, I wasn't playing. It was day 9 when she finally left a voicemail. I didn't listen right away. I watched the timer tick across the screen. 1 minute, 38 seconds. And let it sit in my inbox like a wound I wasn't ready to press on. Instead, I checked her socials. Not because I wanted to torture myself, though that's exactly what I ended up doing, but because curiosity is a slow kind of poison. You don't feel it until it's already in your blood. Her story that morning was a video from some artsy brunch place. She was there. So was Theo. A plate of waffles, 2 glasses of mimosa. Her caption read, "Better company this time." No tag, just that phrase, like a knife slipped under the ribs. I laughed out loud. Not the kind of laugh that means you're okay. The kind that comes when your nervous system throws its hands up and goes, "I give up, man." When I finally opened the voicemail, I expected tears. I expected regret. Maybe even one of those apologies that sounds like a TED Talk. But it wasn't that. It was her voice. Calm, composed, dangerously collected. "Hey, I'm guessing you're still being dramatic. I don't know why you think disappearing is the solution. I kissed someone. Big deal. It's not like I cheated. It was a game, Curtis. Everyone saw it. You made it a thing. But hey, if you're gonna vanish over one stupid moment, maybe that says more about you than it does about me. No, I miss you. No, I'm sorry." No mention of the man she let press his lips to her skin like I hadn't been doing it for the last 6 years. She sounded like someone rehearsing closure for an audience that never showed up. That night, I sat on Nate's balcony, staring at the apartment lights across the street, and wondering what would happen if I just never went back. Not to the apartment. Not to her. Not to the version of myself who kept lowering the bar so she wouldn't trip over it. I didn't want revenge. I wanted disappearance, not just from her life, from the version of me she'd sculpted. The quiet one, the forgivable one, the pushover with just enough backbone to complain, but never enough to leave. But now, I was gone, and the silence wasn't punishing her. It was confusing her. She wasn't used to the game going on without her, and then, around 2:17 a.m., she did something I never expected. She showed up. At Nate's place, in the pouring rain, knocking, calling my name, not crying, not apologizing, but holding something in her hands that made my stomach turn to ice. When I opened the door, the first thing I saw wasn't her. It was the box. A plain gray shoebox, soaked from the rain, held against her chest like it might fall apart if she breathed too hard. And maybe it would have. It already looked like it had been handled too many times by someone with shaking hands. Marla didn't say a word. Her hair was dripping wet, her makeup streaked, in places she would normally never allow, but her face wasn't sad. It was blank, like someone who had seen something she didn't know how to file away in her brain. I stepped aside without inviting her in. She walked past me into Nate's dim kitchen, leaving a trail of muddy water across the tile. She placed the box down on the counter and turned to face me. "You weren't supposed to leave like that," she said, her voice low but steady. "You were supposed to fight." I let out a small laugh under my breath. "I did fight, for years. You just didn't notice because you always won." She looked down at the box like it was going to answer for her. "This wasn't how it was supposed to go," she mumbled. Then she pushed the lid off. Inside were things I hadn't seen in a long time. My old leather-bound notebook I thought I lost in 2019. a dried concert wristband from our anniversary trip to Portland, a cracked Polaroid of us sitting on the hood of my dad's old truck. At the bottom, folded twice, was a letter I wrote her years ago, the one I'd slipped into her suitcase before her first work trip, the one where I told her I'd wait for her, no matter what city, no matter what flight, no matter how far she went chasing whatever it was she needed to prove. I never thought I'd see that letter again. "You kept all this?" I asked, barely above a whisper. "I kept it because I knew I'd need it," she said. "Eventually." There was a long silence between us, the kind that makes you feel like if you move, everything will collapse. Then she said something that landed like a brick to the chest. I kissed him because I wanted to remember what it felt like to be wanted without being known. With you, everything's real, heavy, permanent. But with him, for 10 seconds, I got to forget myself. I didn't know whether to cry or scream, so I did neither. "You humiliated me," I said, "and you call it forgetting yourself. What do you think that makes me?" She didn't answer. She turned, slid the box toward me, and walked to the door. "I brought this because I thought it would make you come back, but maybe I just wanted to prove I still had something left that meant anything to you." She opened the door, rain still thundering outside. Before she left, she turned one last time and said, "You told me to find you when the game ended. I'm here. But I think maybe you already lost interest in being found." Then she was gone, and the box stayed. That's when I noticed something she didn't mention. At the very bottom, under the Polaroid taped to the underside of the lid, was a receipt. Not just any receipt. One dated 3 weeks before the party. A dinner for 2, wine, steak, 1 dessert, and Theo's name on the reservation. I stared at the receipt for a long time. Longer than I probably should have. The ink was slightly faded, like she'd folded it and unfolded it too many times. The date was seared into my brain the moment I saw it. 3 weeks before, that night, before the party, before the dare. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't heat of the moment. This was planned familiarity. You don't go to a quiet dinner spot with someone you barely know. You don't order dessert and wine if you're trying to keep something casual. And you definitely don't let the server print your names on the reservation unless you want to be seen. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there, alone in Nate's kitchen, box still open in front of me, wondering how many things I'd missed while I was busy being the man who stayed home and did the dishes. How many late work nights were dinners like this? How many polite smiles had masked something that wasn't even guilt? Just certainty that I wouldn't do anything about it. I wanted to call her, to ask why she left the receipt in the box at all. Was it a slip, a mistake, or was it intentional, a final way of burning the bridge from her side before I could walk across it again? Or maybe it wasn't a message to me at all. Maybe it was proof that she was never playing a game. She was replacing a player. And I was the one who didn't realize I'd already been benched. It was around 2 a.m. when I got the message. I hadn't spoken to anyone all day. Nate was working a night shift, and I'd shut my phone off for a few hours just to stop staring at it. But when I finally powered it back on, the screen lit up with a name I didn't expect to ever see there. Theo. I blinked twice, convinced I was hallucinating. The last message I ever got from him was 2 years ago. A forwarded meme in a group chat Marla insisted I stay in, even though I barely said a word. Since then, nothing. Not a like, not a tag, not even a passive-aggressive emoji. And yet here he was, 2:03 a.m., messaging me. Didn't know she'd actually come to you. I thought she was bluffing. I read it 3 times, trying to figure out if I was misunderstanding it. Then I noticed the profile picture, a vague black and white photo of a motorcycle helmet. Of course, he was the kind of guy who'd post pictures of things instead of his face. I didn't respond. 2 minutes later, he sent another. I know you probably hate me. You should. But you deserve to know she's not who she pretends to be. That's when my stomach flipped, because as much as I wanted to ignore him, as much as I hated the idea of letting him inside my head, I couldn't stop myself. I typed out one sentence. Then tell me who she really is. He didn't hesitate. She told me you were emotionally distant. Said you didn't love her the way she needed. She cried once after a lunch we had. Not dinner, lunch. And I believed her. She made it sound like you'd already checked out of the marriage. Like you just didn't see her anymore. I felt bad for her. I thought I was helping. Then she kissed me at that party. And afterward, she told me you'd finally gotten the message. Like it was some grand emotional stunt. That's when I realized she wasn't just hurt. She was playing both of us. I sat back in the chair, pulse rising. I'd expected arrogance, a gloating message, maybe even an apology wrapped in condescension. But this sounded like someone who'd just woken up from the same lie I had. He kept going. I cut it off 2 days after the party. She's texted me 6 times since. I haven't answered. I'm not telling you this to win points. I just didn't want you thinking I was still in it. Whatever she's doing now, it's not with me. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to believe he was covering himself. Another part of me, the part that had watched Marla masterfully manipulate her way through work arguments, friend drama, and every hard conversation we ever had, knew he might be telling the truth, because Marla never lied the way most people do. She told partial truths, enough to sound real, enough to protect her version of the story. And suddenly, I started to wonder. Maybe she hadn't come to me with the box because she was sorry. Maybe she came to me because she had nowhere else left to go. I didn't reply to Theo again. I didn't need to. He'd already given me more than I ever expected. But that night, for the first time since I left, I wasn't just sad. I wasn't confused. I was angry. Not the loud kind, the quiet, cold kind that sits behind your ribs and watches everything burn with its arms crossed. Because I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about one kiss. This was about how easily she rewrote the story, and how close I'd come to believing I was the villain in it. I didn't go back with a plan. That was the mistake, probably. But after Theo's messages, something in me snapped. I needed to see it for myself. Not her, necessarily, but the place. The space we used to share, our apartment. I hadn't been back since the night I left. Nate had offered to go with me, but I said no. I didn't even tell him I was going. I needed to walk in as me, not as someone being rescued. It was raining again. It always seemed to be raining lately. Fitting, I guess. The kind of weather where everything feels cinematic, even when it's just wet and miserable. I still had the building code memorized. Still knew the exact way the front door stuck if you didn't push hard enough. And as I stepped into the hallway, it hit me how familiar it all still was. Like my body remembered before my brain caught up. But when I reached our door, something stopped me cold. There were shoes sitting outside. 2 pairs. One was hers. White sneakers, frayed laces, the kind she always kicked off without untying. But the other pair, definitely wasn't mine. They were men's boots. Large, new, clean. I stared at them for maybe 10 seconds, just long enough to feel my stomach twist into something sharp. I hadn't even knocked yet, hadn't touched the handle, and already my chest was doing that hollow thing it did the night of the party. I didn't go inside. Didn't even try. I just stood there, listening. No voices, no music. Just the faint hum of the fridge on the other side of the wall. But it didn't matter. The message was clear enough. She wasn't waiting for me. She was waiting for someone. Or maybe, worse, she wasn't waiting at all. I turned around and walked back down the hall, soaked to the bone and feeling stupid all over again. Not because she had company, but because part of me still wanted her to want me. And that part, it needed to die. It took me a full week to answer her call. 7 days of silence after I saw those boots by the door. I never found out who they belonged to. Maybe they were a date's, maybe a friend's. Maybe they were just a prop for someone she was trying to become. By then, I'd stopped needing to know. But one night, around dusk, as I sat on a bench outside a laundromat 2 towns over, Watching my clothes spin behind fogged glass, the phone rang. I almost didn't check it, but something told me to look. Her name. I answered, but the voice on the other end wasn't hers. It was her sister, Erin. "Curtis?" she asked gently. "She's not doing great, not because of you, because of everything. I think she finally realized she broke something she doesn't know how to fix." I didn't say anything right away. Erin had always been the one who saw both sides. She didn't defend Marla's choices. Not that night. Not ever. But she wasn't calling to guilt me. I could hear that in her voice. "I'm not asking you to go back," she continued. "I just wanted you to know. She's owning it. All of it. She told Mom. She told everyone. Even Theo's girlfriend. Yeah, she didn't know either. Marla's been cleaning up her mess for once. You mattered. She just didn't know how to show it until it was too late." That call should have made me bitter, but it didn't. It made me breathe. For the first time since the party, I wasn't swimming in anger, confusion, or that relentless ache in the center of my chest. I just felt light, because finally I realized something important. Closure doesn't always come in a conversation. Sometimes it's hearing someone else say the thing you were afraid no one ever would. You weren't crazy. You weren't too sensitive. You were just hurt, and it mattered. I didn't go back to Marla. That story ended where it needed to. But I did go forward. I moved out of Nate's and into a small studio by the river, started sketching again. Signed up for an improv class, even though I hate performing. Made new friends, real ones. One day, I even ran into Theo at a bookstore. He saw me, looked awkward for a second, then gave me a small nod. I nodded back. No words. Just quiet mutual understanding between two people who got caught in the same storm. A few weeks later, I got a letter. No return address. It just said, in Marla's handwriting, "When the game ended, I did find you. But by then, you'd already found yourself. That's the part I'll always respect the most. M." I folded the letter, slid it into my notebook, and smiled. Sometimes survival isn't loud. Sometimes it's walking away, staying gone, and still wishing someone well without opening the door again. I didn't lose myself in this story. I found myself in the end of hers. And honestly, that's the best kind of win I could have asked for. Curtis.